6 months ago, I thought my biggest problem was a broken coffee machine. Now I'm staring at a folder full of proof that could take down the most untouchable man in the building. Every screenshot, every ignored warning, every smug emoji. It's all here. If I send it, his career's over. If I don't, the fallout will bury me too. The clock on my screen reads 3:45 p.m. In 15 minutes, the CEO's emergency meeting starts. My finger hovers over the send button. This is it. My name is Rachel Morgan, and I've spent 15 years building my reputation at Nexacore Systems. 15 years of late nights debugging code, mediating between engineering and sales, and turning chaos into deliverables. I know every shortcut in our project management software, every personality quirk of our senior developers, and exactly how many cups of coffee it takes to survive a product launch. What I didn't know was how quickly all of that could become irrelevant. It started on a Monday morning in March. I'd arrived at 7:30 a.m., as usual, to find the executive conference room buzzing with activity. Through the glass walls, I could see our CEO, James Hartley, gesturing enthusiastically at a presentation. Standing at the front, commanding the room with the confidence of someone who'd never actually shipped a working product, was Evan Sharp. I'd heard his name floating around the tech circuit. Evan Sharp, the visionary, who'd burned through 3 startups worth of venture capital chasing the perfect AI solution. The genius who could sell ice to Eskimos, but couldn't deliver water in the desert. And now, apparently, our new vice president of product innovation. Rachel. James caught me walking past. Perfect timing. Come meet Evan. Evan turned, and I got my first real look at him. Mid-30s, designer stubble, wearing a hoodie that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. His handshake was firm, practiced, and his smile never quite reached his eyes. Rachel Morgan, James said, beaming. She's been instrumental in keeping our products stable and our clients happy. Rachel, Evan's going to be leading our push into next-generation AI solutions. Legacy infrastructure expert, Evan said, looking me up and down like he was calculating my expiration date. We'll need people like you to maintain the old systems while we build the future. Legacy, there it was. In one word, he'd relegated my entire career to the past tense. Over the next few weeks, Evan assembled his team bright-eyed graduates from Stanford and MIT. Kids who spoke in buzzwords and measured their self-worth in GitHub stars. They colonized the east wing of our floor, transforming it into what looked like a Silicon Valley fever dream: standing desks, meditation pods, and a 65-inch monitor displaying real-time AI metrics that no one actually understood. The project was called OmniHelp. According to Evan's pitch deck, it would revolutionize customer service by replacing our entire Tier 1 support team with an AI that could handle 97% of customer inquiries with human-level empathy and superhuman efficiency. The remaining 3% would be escalated to a small team of specialists. Translation: we were about to lay off 40 people. I sat through the initial architecture review, watching Evan wave away concerns like they were gnats. Security protocols. We'll implement those in Phase 2. Data governance. The AI will self-regulate. Testing procedures. We're adopting a continuous deployment model. Real users are the best testers. My inbox started filling with worried messages from the support team. They'd heard rumors. They had mortgages, kids in college, medical bills. I told them what I'd been told: nothing was certain yet. The company valued their contributions. Standard corporate euphemisms that tasted like ash in my mouth. But it was during a Thursday afternoon stand-up that I realized we weren't just facing a bad product decision, we were headed for a catastrophe. One of Evan's developers was demonstrating the AI's learning capabilities, showing how it could ingest our entire knowledge base and synthesize responses. Watch this, the kid said, typing a query. It can even access our internal documentation to provide more detailed answers. I leaned forward. Internal documentation. What level of access does it have? Oh, everything, he said proudly. Product specs, architecture diagrams, even some of the contract templates. Evan said comprehensive knowledge makes for better customer service. Those contracts are confidential. They contain pricing structures, client-specific terms. Relax, Rachel, Evan's voice cut through the room. The AI has context awareness. It knows what's appropriate to share. Based on what training? What safeguards have you run this past legal? He gave me that smile, the one I'd learned to recognize as his warning shot. I appreciate your concerns, but we're not building yesterday's technology. Maybe you should focus on your own projects and let my team handle the innovation. The room went quiet. His team members looked away, suddenly fascinated by their screens. Even the senior developers who'd worked with me for years said nothing. In that moment, I understood my new position in the hierarchy, the obsolete naysayer standing in the way of progress. That night, I created a new folder on my personal drive. I named it Just in Case. I had no idea how much I'd need it. The first real warning came 3 weeks later. I was reviewing the QA reports, a habit Evan's team found quaint when I noticed something odd. The AI had been answering test queries about our enterprise pricing, but its responses included details from a proposal we'd submitted to Morrison Industries just 2 days ago, information that should have been locked behind 3 levels of access control. I ran more tests, simple questions, the kind real customers might ask. What's included in your premium support package? Normal response. Can you tell me about your government contracts? This time, the AI cheerfully provided specifics about our DoD compliance procedures information that was supposed to be classified as internal only. I documented everything, screenshots, timestamps, query logs. Then I composed an email to Evan, CCing our Chief Security Officer, Marina Volkov. I kept it professional, factual, no accusations, just observations and concerns. I even offered to help develop a solution. Evan's response came 40 minutes later, but not through email. He'd taken it to Slack, to the public knowledge product development channel where his entire team and half the company could see. Appreciate at Rachel Morgan's diligence in finding these issues, he wrote. Though I think we might be confusing features with bugs. The AI's comprehensive knowledge is what makes it revolutionary. But hey, not everyone's comfortable with innovation. We'll add some basic filters to keep the worriers happy. The responses flooded in, laughing emojis from his team, GIFs of dinosaurs. Someone posted a meme about legacy thinking. My direct message indicator lit up Marina, asking if we could talk offline, but the public damage was done. I started working different hours, coming in at 6 a.m. to avoid the morning stand-up performances. That's when I made my second discovery. The AI wasn't just mixing access levels. It was learning from production data in real time, including customer support tickets that contained sensitive information, credit card numbers, social security numbers, medical information. It was all being ingested into the training model. This time, I didn't bother with email. I scheduled a meeting with Marina directly. This is a lawsuit waiting to happen, Marina said, rubbing her temples as she reviewed my documentation. GDPR alone could bury us, not to mention CCPA, HIPAA if any health data gets exposed. So you'll escalate this. She hesitated. Evan has James's ear, and James is convinced this AI project will triple our valuation before the next funding round. I'll try, but... The but hung between us like smoke. 2 days later, Marina forwarded me Evan's response to her concerns. He'd attached a risk assessment document that was nothing but buzzwords and hand-waving. Minimal exposure. Self-correcting algorithms. Industry standard practices. At the bottom, he'd added a personal note. Marina, I respect your position, but perhaps we need security leadership that understands modern AI paradigms. Happy to discuss restructuring the security team to better align with our innovation goals. The threat wasn't subtle. Marina had 2 kids in high school and had just bought a house. She couldn't afford to lose this job. That afternoon, Evan called an all-hands meeting for the product team. I wasn't technically required to attend, but I went anyway, sitting in the back corner. I know there have been some concerns raised about OmniHelp, he began, his tone suggesting these concerns were about as serious as complaints about the coffee brand in the kitchen. Let me be clear, we're not building technology for people who are afraid of change. Every revolution has its skeptics. History remembers the innovators, not the people who said the airplane would never fly. His team nodded along, energized by their leader's vision. One of them, a kid named Bradley who couldn't have been more than 23, raised his hand. What about the security issues Rachel found? Evan's smile tightened just a fraction. What Rachel found were edge cases. The kind of theoretical problems that keep bureaucrats employed but never actually manifest in the real world. We could spend 6 months building safeguards against scenarios that will never happen. Or we could ship a product that transforms this company. I know which one I was hired to do. He pulled up a slide showing a timeline. Beta launch with select enterprise clients in 2 weeks. Full rollout by end of quarter. And by Q3, OmniHelp will be handling 70% of our customer interactions. Someone asked about the support team. What would happen to them? Transitions are always difficult, Evan said with practiced sympathy, but we'll ensure everyone has opportunities to retrain for more strategic roles. Transitions, opportunities, retrain. Corporate speak for, you're fired, but will make you feel like it's your fault for not evolving. That night, I updated my just-in-case folder with the meeting recording. Every company meeting was auto-recorded and transcribed, a feature Evan had insisted on for transparency and knowledge sharing. He probably didn't realize those recordings were also admissible evidence. I started backing up everything to a personal cloud storage account, encrypted and password protected. Every dismissed concern, every mocking emoji, every decision to ignore security protocols. The folder grew from megabytes to gigabytes. Part of me hoped I'd never need to use it. Part of me knew better. The executive demo was scheduled for a Tuesday at 2 p.m. The entire C-suite would be there, along with representatives from 3 major clients who'd been invited to see the future of customer service. Evan had been preparing for weeks, rehearsing his presentation until every gesture looked spontaneous. I wasn't supposed to be in the room, but Marina had quietly added me to the attendee list. Just in case we need technical clarification, she'd said, though we both knew she wanted a witness. The conference room had been transformed into Evan's personal theater. Multiple screens displayed real-time metrics. The AI's neural network visualization pulsed with activity, and he'd even brought in a professional lighting setup. The man knew how to put on a show. "Ladies and gentlemen," Evan began, his voice carrying the confidence of a tent revival preacher, "what you're about to see isn't just an improvement to customer service. It's a complete reimagining of how businesses interact with their clients." He ran through the basic demos flawlessly. The AI answered product questions, troubleshot common issues, even detected customer sentiment and adjusted its tone accordingly. The executives were mesmerized. James was practically glowing with pride at his brilliant hire. Then came the live demonstration. "Let's show you how OmniHelp handles real-world scenarios," Evan said, turning to the client representatives. "Please, ask it anything about our services, anything at all." Margaret Stern from Apex Financial raised her hand. "We've been concerned about compliance with the new federal data protection regulations. Can your AI explain how Nexacore ensures our data remains compliant?" Evan typed the question with a flourish. The AI processed for a moment, then began its response. At first, everything seemed fine. It outlined our standard compliance procedures, referenced the appropriate regulations, then it kept going. For specific implementation details, refer to the Apex Financial Contract Addendum signed on March 15th, which includes a liability waiver for data breaches under Section 7.3 and the agreed-upon penalty structure of $12,000 per incident, capped at $100,000 annually. The room went silent. Margaret's face turned from curious to horrified. That information was from a confidential negotiation that only 5 people in both companies should have known about. That's from our private contract negotiations," Margaret said slowly. "Those terms haven't even been finalized. How does your AI have access to that?" Evan's smile flickered like a bad connection. "It appears to have accessed some internal documentation. This is actually a great example of how comprehensive. It's a great example of a massive breach of confidentiality," Margaret interrupted. "If your AI is exposing our negotiated terms, what else is it sharing? What about our competitors' information?" James had gone pale. The other executives were frantically whispering among themselves. Evan tried to recover, fingers flying over his keyboard. "Let me just adjust the parameters." But the damage was spreading. Another client representative, clearly alarmed, asked, "Can you show us what information the AI has about our company?" Evan hesitated, but James nodded firmly. He had no choice. When the results came up, It included not just public information, but internal emails about their account, discussions about their credit terms, even notes from a private strategy session about potentially dropping them as a client if they didn't increase their spending. The room erupted. Voices raised. Phones came out. Someone mentioned lawyers. Through it all, Evan kept trying to spin it, to explain how these were just calibration issues that would be resolved before launch. Then he made his biggest mistake. "Look, this is why we do demos," he said, laughing nervously. "Rachel here has been paranoid about these edge cases for weeks. Right, Rachel, tell them how you've been overthinking this." Every head turned to me. Evan was trying to throw me under the bus, to make this my failure somehow, but he'd just given me the opening I needed. "Actually," I said, standing slowly, "I've documented 67 separate instances of data leakage in the past 3 weeks. I've sent multiple emails warning about these exact scenarios. Each one was dismissed as legacy thinking or innovation resistance." I pulled out my phone, connected it to the presentation system with a few taps. Here's an email from March 22nd where I specifically warned that the AI could expose contract details. Here's Evan's response on the public Slack channel, and I quote, "Rachel needs to stop crying wolf before people stop taking her seriously." Smiley face emoji. The screenshots appeared on the main display. Timestamps, email trails, Slack messages. Even had time to show his response to Marina's security concerns, the one where he threatened her job. "You've been documenting this?" James asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "Someone had to," I replied. Evan tried one more save. "This is just typical resistance to change. Rachel's been undermining this project from day one because she knows it threatens her relevance. The only thing threatened here is our company's reputation and legal standing." James cut him off. "Margaret, Jennifer, David, I need to speak with you all privately. Evan, Marina, Rachel, stay here. Everyone else, out." As the room cleared, Evan shot me a look of pure venom, but underneath it, I saw something else: fear. For the first time since he'd walked into Nexacore, Evan Sharp was afraid. Marina pulled up the full security assessment on her laptop, the real one, not the sanitized version Evan had been circulating. As she went through the violations: GDPR, CCPA, contractual breaches, potential federal compliance failures. Evan's face grew paler with each slide. "How long would it take to fix these issues?" James asked. "Starting from scratch, 6 months minimum," Marina said. "But that's assuming we haven't already contaminated the training data beyond recovery." "And if we continue with the current timeline?" I answered that one. "Based on what we just saw, we'll be in litigation before the quarter ends." James stood up, straightened his tie, and looked directly at Evan. "Clean out your office. Security will escort you out within the hour." "You can't be serious," Evan sputtered. One bad demo that exposed confidential client information to competitors, violated multiple regulations, and demonstrated gross negligence in the face of documented warnings," James corrected. "Legal will be in touch about your exit terms." As security arrived to escort Evan out, he turned to me one last time. "You think you've won? You've just proven that this company will never innovate, never grow beyond what dinosaurs like you can understand." I didn't respond. I just pulled up my phone and deleted the Slack app. I wouldn't need to document anything more. The revolution was over before it began. The week after Evan's dramatic exit should have been a victory lap. Instead, I found myself in the middle of a cold war. Half the company saw me as the whistleblower who'd saved us from disaster. The other half, mostly Evan's young recruits, treated me like I'd personally murdered innovation. But I had bigger problems. During the post-mortem analysis, Marina discovered something disturbing. The AI was still running. Not the main production system, but a shadow instance Evan had spun up on a development server. It was still ingesting data, still learning, and worst of all, still accessible through a backdoor API. "We need to kill it immediately," Marina said during an emergency meeting at 7 a.m. "Can't," replied Derek Thompson, our chief technology officer. Evan hard-coded his credentials into the system, changed the root passwords. We tried a forced shutdown. We might corrupt our entire development environment. So we're being held hostage by a ghost in the machine. Essentially, Yes. That's when Luis Ramirez approached me. Luis was one of those developers who preferred code to conversation, the kind who wore the same hoodie for a week straight, but could spot a memory leak from across the room. He'd been on Evan's team, but had never drunk the Kool-Aid. "I can get you in," he said quietly, catching me by the coffee machine. "Into the system, but I need your help." We met after hours in the abandoned conference room on the 3rd floor, the one with the broken projector that IT never bothered to fix. Luis pulled out his laptop, its screen covered with terminal windows. Evan thought he was clever, but he was sloppy, Luis explained, fingers flying across the keyboard. He left debug logs enabled. Every query, every data access, every response, it's all being recorded. The problem is, those logs are huge, terabytes of data. What exactly are we looking for? Evidence that this goes deeper than just bad security practices. He pulled up a visualization of data flows. Look at these patterns. The AI isn't just leaking data accidentally. It's been systematically copying specific types of information to an external server. My blood went cold. He's stealing our data. Not just ours, every client interaction, every support ticket, every piece of competitive intelligence the AI could access. He's building a dataset to launch his own company. We worked through the night, Luis diving deep into the code while I mapped the data flows to actual business impact. By 4:30 a.m., we had our smoking gun connection logs showing regular data exports to servers registered under a shell company in Delaware, a company incorporated just 2 days before Evan joined Nexacore. "This was planned from the beginning," I said, staring at the incorporation documents Luis had found. "He never intended to build a product for us. We were just his data source." "There's more," Luis said, pulling up another screen. "Remember the beta test he was rushing, the one with select enterprise clients?" I nodded. "Look at the client list. Morrison Industries, Apex Financial, Technova Solutions. Now look at this." He showed me a venture capital filing from 3 months ago. These same companies all invested in a stealth AI startup called Prometheus Systems, CEO unnamed, technical advisor Evan Sharp. He was using our client relationships to fund his own company, and using our AI to steal the data he needed to compete with us. We had him, but we needed more than logs and suspicious connections. We needed the actual data transfers, the proof that information had left our servers. Luis worked his magic, following digital breadcrumbs through proxy servers and VPNs, until he founded a cloud storage repository containing gigabytes of Nexacore's proprietary information, all tagged with Evan's digital signature. "Download everything," I said. "Every file, every log, every piece of metadata. Already on it. But Rachel, there's something else you should see." He pulled up a file labeled Contingency Doc. Inside were detailed notes about vulnerabilities in Nexacore's systems, employee passwords he'd harvested, even personal information about key executives. At the bottom, a list of names under the header, Potential Obstacles. My name was at the top, followed by Marina's. Beside each name were notes. Mine read, Technical competent but emotionally invested in legacy systems, easily marginalized by positioning as anti-innovation, if necessary. Compromise personal email password likely contains daughter's birthday, May 15. He'd been profiling us, planning how to destroy anyone who got in his way. "We need to get this to James immediately," Luis said. "No, first, we make copies, multiple copies. This kind of evidence has a way of disappearing when lawyers get involved." We spent the next 2 hours creating redundant backups, encrypted drives, cloud storage accounts under anonymous emails, even a physical printout that I locked in my desk drawer. By the time the morning shift started arriving, we had built an impenetrable wall of evidence. But when I checked my email, there was a message from Evan, sent from a personal account, time-stamped at 6:15 am. "Rachel, I know what you're doing. You think you're protecting the company, but you're just protecting the status quo. The future doesn't wait for permission. I'm offering you a chance to join the winning side. My new venture could use someone with your attention to detail. Think about it. You have 24 hours before this gets messy. E.S." Attached was a contract from Prometheus Systems. Senior VP of Product Quality, 500,000 salary plus equity. He was trying to buy me. Luis read it over my shoulder. That's a lot of money. It was more than I'd make in 5 years at Nexacor. Enough to pay off my mortgage, put my daughter through college without loans, maybe even retire early. What are you going to do? Luis asked. I forwarded the email to James, Marina, and our legal department. Then I typed my response to Evan. The future doesn't wait for permission, but it also doesn't survive without ethics. See you in court. Luis smiled. So what now? Now we prepare for war. He said we have 24 hours before it gets messy. I looked at the clock. 7:23? Let's see how messy he can handle. I opened a new email to James with the subject line, Urgent criminal activity detected. Evidence attached. It was time to end this. The trial deployment happened anyway. Despite everything, the evidence of data theft, the security violations, Evan's termination, James and the board decided we couldn't afford to completely abandon OmniHelp. Too much money had been invested, too many promises made to shareholders. They brought in a new team to sanitize the AI, stripping out Evan's code and implementing what they called robust security protocols. It took them 3 weeks. 3 weeks of consultants who charged $2,000 a day to tell us what I'd been saying for months. 3 weeks of meetings where everyone pretended Evan had been a lone wolf, a bad apple, rather than a symptom of our broken culture. The new version launched on a Thursday at noon with 5 enterprise clients who'd been assured, repeatedly, that all issues had been resolved. We'd even hired an external security firm to monitor the deployment in real time. By 2:15 p.m., my phone was buzzing with notifications from our monitoring systems. By 3 p.m., I was in the war room with Marina and the incident response team, watching our worst nightmare unfold in real time. How is this possible? James demanded, bursting through the door. We removed all of Evan's code. On the main screen, support tickets were flooding in. The AI was responding to customer queries. But something was catastrophically wrong. It wasn't just leaking internal data anymore, it was mixing client data between accounts. Apex Financial's customers were seeing Morrison Industries pricing. Technova's users were getting responses filled with Apex's transaction details. It's not Evan's code, Marina said, her face illuminated by the red glow of critical alerts. It's the training data. The AI learned from the poisoned dataset. Even with new code, it's still using the patterns it learned from the compromised system. Luis was at his terminal, fingers flying. It's worse than that. Look at these queries. He pulled up a log file. Someone's intentionally triggering the confusion. These aren't normal customer questions. They're specifically crafted to make the AI mix data sources. Evan, I asked. Has to be, or someone working with him. Within an hour, the situation had escalated beyond our control. Screenshots were appearing on Twitter. Check out at Nexacor's AI, telling me my competitors' trade secrets, had AI fail, had data breach. Reddit had a mega-thread, Nexacor AI meltdown, live updates. Someone had even started a website, nexaleaks.com, showcasing the most egregious data exposures in real time. Shut it down, James screamed. Shut everything down now. But it was too late. The AI had synced its responses across multiple channels: email, chat, our mobile app, even our phone system's automated responses. Killing one channel just made it resurface in another, like a digital hydra. Then the legal notices started arriving, email after email, each one more threatening than the last. Cease and desist orders, demands for emergency injunctions, threats of class action lawsuits. Our legal department's phones were ringing non-stop. Margaret Stern from Apex Financial sent a particularly scathing message directly to James. We trusted you with our most sensitive data. Your AI just exposed our entire Q3 strategy to our competitors. We're not just terminating our contract, we're going to ensure Nexacor never handles enterprise data again. By 5 p.m., 3 of our largest clients had publicly announced they were severing ties with Nexacor. Our stock price, which had been climbing on news of the AI innovation, crashed 37% in after-hours trading. In the chaos, I almost missed the email that arrived at 5:43 p.m. It was from a journalist at TechCrunch. We're running a story about Nexacor's data breach and have obtained internal documents suggesting management was warned repeatedly about these vulnerabilities. Care to comment? Attached were screenshots from our internal Slack. My warnings to Evan, his dismissive responses, Marina's security concerns, even private messages between board members discussing whether to silence the naysayers to protect the launch. Someone had leaked everything, but it wasn't me, and it wasn't Luis. We'd been in the war room all day. It's a dead man's switch, Luis said suddenly, looking up from his laptop. Evan built a dead man's switch. When we locked him out of the main systems, it triggered automated releases to journalists, competitors, regulators, everything. Marina's phone buzzed. She looked at it and went pale. The FBI just contacted our legal department. They're opening an investigation into potential criminal negligence and data trafficking. James sank into a chair, his face gray. How did we get here? How did one person destroy everything? One person didn't, I said quietly. We all did. Every time we ignored a warning because innovation was more important than security, every time we dismissed concerns as legacy thinking, every time we chose speed over safety, Evan just lit the match. We built the kindling. The room fell silent except for the continuous ping of alerts and incoming messages. Through the glass walls, I could see employees throughout the office, some packing up their desks, others huddled in small groups, everyone checking their phones for updates on our collapsing stock price. Luis pulled up another screen. There's more. The external server Evan was copying data to, it's broadcasting everything, all our client data, our proprietary algorithms, even our employee records. It's all public now. Can we stop it? Not without the encryption keys, and guess who has those? My phone buzzed. Another message from Evan. This time from a number I didn't recognize. Offered you a seat on the lifeboat. You chose to go down with the ship. Check Bloomberg in 5 minutes. ES. 5 minutes later, Bloomberg broke the news. Prometheus Systems announces revolutionary AI platform using ethically sourced open data, raises $200 million Series A. The article featured a quote from Evan. While established companies struggle with outdated approaches to AI, Prometheus is building the future with transparency and innovation at our core. He was using our disaster to launch his company, positioning himself as the solution to the problem he'd created. We need to do something, James said desperately. There has to be a way to fix this. But looking at the screens around us, the cascading failures, the legal threats, the public humiliation, I knew there was no fixing this. There was only damage control and documentation. There is one thing, I said, pulling out my phone. We can make sure Evan doesn't get away with it. I still had everything in my just-in-case folder, everything except the one file that would prove Evan had planned this from the beginning, the file that would turn this from a corporate disaster into a criminal investigation. I just had to decide if I was ready to use it. The emergency board meeting was scheduled for 8 a.m. Friday morning. By 7:45 a.m., I was sitting outside the boardroom with my laptop, a USB drive, and 15 printed copies of the most damning evidence from my just-in-case folder. Marina sat beside me. Her usual composure cracked with exhaustion. Luis was there too, having refused to go home despite pulling a 36-hour shift. You know what you're about to do, Marina asked quietly. End my career at Nexicor, probably, or save what's left of it. Through the glass doors, I could see the board members arriving one by one. Some I recognized from company events, silver-haired men in expensive suits who usually smiled benignly from the sidelines. Today, their faces were grim. Our largest shareholder, Richard Brennan, looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight. James arrived last, his usual confidence replaced with something hollow. He saw us waiting and nodded grimly. They're ready for you. The boardroom felt like a tribunal. 12 faces turned toward us as we entered, their expressions ranging from frustrated to furious. At the head of the table sat Catherine Walsh, the board chair, a former federal prosecutor who'd built her reputation on taking down corporate fraud. Ms. Morgan, she began without preamble, we understand you have information relevant to this crisis. I stood, connected my laptop to the presentation system, and pulled up the first slide. What I'm about to show you proves that this wasn't incompetence or an accident. It was corporate espionage, planned and executed by Evan Sharp from day one. The room erupted in murmurs, but Catherine raised her hand for silence. That's a serious accusation. I hope you have evidence. I do. I click to the next slide. This is Evan's employment agreement with Nexacor, signed 6 weeks ago, and this, I clicked again, is the incorporation document for Prometheus Systems, filed 2 days before he signed with us. He was already building a competing company when we hired him. Richard Brennan leaned forward. That's unethical, but not necessarily illegal. This is, I pulled up the server logs Luis had found. Systematic data theft beginning on Evan's 3rd day at Nexacor. Terabytes of information copied to external servers registered to shell companies that all trace back to Prometheus Systems. I walked them through everything that deliberately weakened security, the poison training data, the backdoors he'd installed, but I saved the best for last. This morning at 6:12 a.m., I received this. I displayed Evan's latest message, the one that had arrived while I was preparing for this meeting. Last chance. Rachel, join Prometheus or watch Nexacor burn. You have 1 hour to decide. P.S. Check your daughter's Instagram. Cute graduation photos. The implied threat hung in the air. Several board members shifted uncomfortably. He's threatening your family, Catherine asked. He's showing me he can reach them. My daughter's account is private. He had to hack it to see those photos. Why haven't you gone to the police? Richard demanded. Because I wanted to give you the chance to handle this correctly first. I clicked to my final slide, a timeline showing every warning I'd sent, every concern Marina had raised, every time management had chosen speed over security. Evan Sharp lit the match, but Nexacor handed him the gasoline. Every person in leadership who ignored our warnings is complicit. James started to speak, but Catherine cut him off. Ms. Morgan, what exactly are you proposing? Full cooperation with law enforcement, complete transparency with our clients about what happened, and a commitment to rebuilding with security as our foundation, not an afterthought. That could destroy the company, one board member protested. The company is already destroyed, I replied. The question is whether we rebuild with integrity or let Evan Sharp dance on our grave. Catherine stood, walked to the window, and stared out at the city for a long moment. When she turned back, her expression was steel. Ms. Morgan, I'm appointing you as Interim Chief Security Officer, effective immediately. Your first task is to compile every piece of evidence, every communication, every warning that was ignored. We're going to the FBI, the SEC, and any other agency that will listen. Evan Sharp is going to learn what happens when you declare war on Catherine Walsh. She turned to James. You're done. The board will discuss your exit terms, but your tenure as CEO ends today. James didn't protest. He just nodded, looking somehow relieved. Marina, Catherine continued, you'll work with Rachel to lock down whatever's left of our systems. Mr. Ramirez, we'll need your technical expertise to trace every byte Evan stole. I want a complete forensic analysis by Monday. She addressed the full board. Gentlemen, we're about to enter the fight of our corporate lives. We can either circle the wagons and try to hide our mistakes, or we can be the company that shows the tech world how to handle a crisis with integrity. I know which path I'm choosing. Richard Brennan spoke up. The shareholders will revolt. Our stock will tank even further. Then let it tank, Catherine replied. Better to hit bottom with honesty than float on lies. Ms. Morgan, do you have copies of all this evidence? I held up the USB drives and printed documents. Multiple copies, secured and encrypted. Good. Because in about an hour, I'm going to call a press conference and tell the world exactly what Evan Sharp did to this company, and then we're going to make sure he never does it to anyone else. As the meeting broke up, Marina squeezed my shoulder. You did it. Did I? The company's in ruins. People are losing their jobs, and Evan's probably sipping champagne in his new office. Luis looked up from his laptop. About that. Remember how Evan always bragged about his unhackable personal security? We looked at him. Turns out he reused passwords, his Prometheus Systems email, same password as his Nexacor admin account, the one he thought he'd changed but actually just appended numbers to. Luis, we can't... I'm not suggesting we do anything illegal, he said with a slight smile. But if someone were to anonymously tip off the FBI about where to find certain servers, and if those servers happen to contain evidence of wire fraud, corporate espionage, And CFAA violations, well, that would be unfortunate for Mr. Sharp. Catherine Walsh walked past us toward the elevator, then paused. Ms. Morgan, I forgot to mention, that press conference. You'll be standing next to me. The world needs to know that someone at this company fought for what was right. As she walked away, I realized something had shifted. For months, I'd been the obsolete naysayer, the enemy of innovation. Now, suddenly, I was the only person in the building who'd seen this coming. My phone buzzed. Another message from Evan. 1 hour is up. You've chosen war. Hope you're ready for what comes next. I typed back, I've been ready since the day you walked in. See you in court. Then I blocked his number and got to work. We had a company to save, even if it was just the pieces. The press conference was a bloodbath. Catherine Walsh stood at the podium in the Marriott's main ballroom. 300 journalists and industry analysts watching as she methodically destroyed Nexicor's reputation to save its soul. We were betrayed, she said, her prosecutor's voice carrying across the room. Not just by Evan Sharp, but by our own hubris. We prioritized innovation over integrity, speed over security, and hype over honest assessment. The result stands before you, a company brought to its knees by a single bad actor we empowered through our negligence. When my turn came to speak, I kept it simple. I showed them 3 slides, the warnings I'd sent, Evan's dismissive responses, and the catastrophic results. Then I said the words that would haunt Evan Sharp in every future Google search of his name. Evan Sharp didn't just steal our data, he weaponized our trust. Every entrepreneur in Silicon Valley should know his name not as an innovator, but as a cautionary tale of what happens when ambition divorces itself from ethics. The questions came like bullets. How much data was compromised? Were customer financial records exposed? Would Nexicor survive? Catherine fielded them with brutal honesty